Hey everyone, my name is Nick Harrison with Rocky River Woodworks. You can find me on Instagram at RockyRiverWW. In today's video, we're going to be making a shop mallet. Stick around. So the first thing we're going to do is to grab a piece of wood. That would be helpful to start out with. I have a piece of red oak here that I'm going to use to make the actual striking piece itself, the head of the hammer, of the mallet. So I'm going to rip it down. It has some roundovers on it because it was a scrap piece left over from a top plate of a staircase. I'm going to trim those off and then rip down a couple pieces to 3.5 inches. So now that I have this ripped down to 3.5 inches, I'm going to cut it to length at 5 inches. I'm going to cut 3 of these. So the next thing we're going to do is set our miter saw at a 2.5 degree angle off of 90. So I guess it'd be, what, 87.5. And we're going to just cut one piece, one of those 5-inch pieces, cut the sides of it to get a taper on both sides. Now that we have a taper on both sides of one of those pieces, we're going to find the center point and cut the piece of wood directly in half. All right, now when we cut that in half, we cut it like this. Flip these pieces around to allow the taper to be in the middle. That's because when we put our handle in, that wedge is going to help us maintain structure in the handle. However, that is way too small, so we need to move these out a little bit, but we need to make sure that everything is still squared up. That's very important for the center of gravity when you're flinging the hammer trying to hit something. So in order to make these perfectly squared up, I'm going to set my depth gauge here to 1/4 inch and draw a line all the way down both edges. Now that our lines are drawn, we're going to make sure that our tapers are still angled correctly. That is correct. And then we're going to glue one piece on top, lining the lines up on both sides. That'll keep everything the way it needs to be. When we glue it up, we just need to make sure everything stays square. And now that it is clamped up and glued together, we get to the funnest part of any project, and that is watching glue dry. While the glue is drying, we're going to go ahead and cut our handle. I have a piece of black walnut here that I'm going to use just because I have it, and it's long enough to be a handle of a mallet. I'm going to cut mine down to 1 inch by 1.5 inches, and then if I have to, I'll go smaller. Basically, I'm just trying to find something that's comfortable for my hand. I'm huge and I have big hands, so I'm going to have a big mallet handle. So now that the glue is dry, let's take the clamps off. And what we're going to do is label or mark our front and back of this taper. So you could just measure it and then put it on here, measure that, transfer it to here. What I'm going to do is just lay it on top of the handle like this, and then just mark my lines here. So now we have some faint lines to go off of, and we're going to first go ahead and glue this piece on here to make the full set, so to speak, and then we will work on our handle. So the marks that we made, I have transferred onto this handle here. You see how they're tapered. I'm going to cut those out, those notches, on the bandsaw. Whenever you cut these wedges out, make sure that you save those. Those are going to come in handy towards the end. So I made a slight mistake. Instead of having it tapered out, whatever your measurement was down here, this needs to be a straight line to that measurement. I just wasn't thinking if it's tapered out, you're not going to be able to get the head to slide over top of it. So whatever this measurement is, just make a straight cut all the way out to the end. The next thing we're going to do is to cut 2 relief cuts off-centered from this, and then we're going to drill a hole at each one of them. These relief cuts will allow this wood to split open when we drive wedges in at the end. Now we have our 2 relief cuts, and we're going to drill a hole at the base of each one of these lines. That will keep this wood from splitting when we drive the wedges in. All right, so now that the glue has had time to dry, we're going to take the clamps off. We're going to make sure that our handle tenon fits inside of here. All right, so now at the end here, we have the little slots where we cut the relief cuts. We're going to put glue in there and then drive some wedges in here to spread that out and fill that gap. That'll hold everything tight like it should be. Now that we have our wedges driven in there, we're going to let all this glue dry. So now that the glue has dried, we're going to take this over to the bandsaw and just cut this tenon that's protruding out the top of the head, cut that off. So now we're going to put our miter saw back on a 2.5 degree miter, and then I'm going to cut these edges, number one, to be flush with each other, but we're going to cut it on a 2.5 degree miter. Now I'm going to give everything a round over on the router table. Now I'm going to sand everything down real good on the spindle sander. So the very last thing I'm going to do is to apply some tung oil to everything just to seal it really well, and then we're finished. So after your tung oil has dried, you are officially finished. This is a real basic mallet. There's already a few things that I see that I don't really like about it, just because I got into a hurry. This was the first mallet I've ever made. I've always either bought a mallet or just used like a dead blow hammer. So it does have the tapered edges to help swing and hit. I'm going to let it dry overnight, and then hopefully that'll give the glue a little bit more time to fully cure. I'm sure that if you hit something hard enough, if you hit metal hard enough, it would split this. But the way we did it is pretty, it should hold up pretty strong. So we'll find out. We'll see how it works out. But hopefully, if you're like me and this was your first mallet, it's something you can be proud of and use. So it's not the prettiest in the world, but it was leftover wood that I had laying around. So it will work for now. Hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you found value in this video. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at RockyRiverWW. Thanks for watching.